Welcome to a football show here from the 440 Sports Network. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Go read his work, Tennessean.com. And, of course, I am Braden Gall. You can get to me on the artist formerly known as Twitter, at Braden Gall if you'd like, at Nick Suss, of course, for him. We're going to talk a little SEC football, two giant playoff elimination games between LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Missouri, and also the University of Texas coming to Nashville for a ranked matchup between SEC team Texas and SEC team Vanderbilt, question mark?
Both are accurate.
Technically, Vanderbilt acting, walking, talking, and playing like an SEC football team. So we're going to have some SEC stuff a little bit later on. The Lions game, look, it's hard to preview this game, Nick, in terms of like, hey, what are the keys to victory for the Tennessee Titans? It feels so hollow to talk about it that way. But I am curious what the outcome will do to the team from a mentality standpoint. So that's where I'm curious about this particular game. And, of course, all the trades. We'll get to all the trades. Two of them have happened so far. You were talking to all the players about what it's like to be in the building when all that stuff starts to go down. Also affecting the emotional state of this locker room, the very fragile emotional state of this particular locker room and team and sideline. So we'll talk about that. Trading DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones, I don't think a surprise at all, but certainly two very major veteran pieces from a professional standpoint. Just two very good professional athletes that act professionally that are going to be gone from the locker room. All right, so, and Nick, great stuff all over the website by you, so go check it out, Tennessean. Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So here's the deal. First of all, as we alluded to, congratulations on all of the awards that they're winning. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, by the way, great merch right here. You can see that hat right there. I got it where if you're on the YouTubes. Thumbs up, by the way, notifications on, but you can also see the hat. Shotgun Willie's named Best Barbecue, of course, by the Nashville Scene Writers. The critics there, the critics pick for barbecue in Nashville. It's the best brisket I've ever had. It's Texas barbecue done right in Nashville, Tennessee. Go check them out. And Sinkers Beverages, 4-time Liquor Store of the Year, as named by you, the Nashville readers, and top craft beer retailer. Huge beer fridge if you like good local beer. And of course, Nick, all of our company and all of our businesses here on this platform are all local businesses. We like keeping the dollars in the community. So spend that dollar in the community, because then that dollar gets respent back onto the community. That's how good local business works. And that's why we appreciate all your support and why they win all kinds of awards. I'll tell you about how they're working together to make your Thanksgiving easier a little bit later on, Nick. We'll do that in a little bit. Okay, so
tease.
Let's start with teasing the ad always works. Let's discuss the two big trades that come down on Wednesday. Sounds like Ernest Jones was in the building when it happened. DeAndre Hopkins not in the building. DeAndre Hopkins, a 5th-round pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. I've not seen how much salary the Titans might be retaining on that. I can't imagine it's a ton, but it could be a 4th-round pick if the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl, I think is also what I've heard and seen reported there. So that's the DeAndre. Let's start with that one and just say 5th-round pick, conditional being a 4th-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs and a little bit of salary. What'd you make of the deal for the job that Rand Carthon in the front office did?
Yeah, so I mean, cleaning up the bits. The reason this hasn't been announced yet is that there are still physicals to be passed, and there's still a little bit of money stuff that needs to be worked out on who's paying what. There isn't that much money left on Hopkins' deal this year, given how much of it was paid out in advance. So the Titans probably end up paying roughly half of it, but it won't be all that much money. And 5 conditionally can move to a 4, depending on, I think it's 60% of snaps on a Super Bowl run for Hopkins, something along those lines, which is going to be interesting. He's got to stay healthy in order for it to actually come to fruition. And he's got to, make the Super Bowl, which is something that you can't take for granted. I know the Chiefs always are in the Super Bowl, but you can't just assume they're going to be there, especially with the way Buffalo and Baltimore and some of these other teams are playing. But yeah, I mean, to get value out of Hopkins at this stage in his career, when you're trading somebody who 2.5 months ago hurt his knee, and there's still probably question marks about his long-term viability there, trading somebody who has 11 games left on a contract, trading somebody who's, I believe, 32 years old, going on 33. I'm already seeing the questions about, is this that much worse than Amari Cooper, that it's 2 rounds different? It's an age thing. It's a wear and tear on the body thing. It's
Yep.
just a general. DeAndre Hopkins is not an explosive receiver at this phase in his career. He's an incredible receiver. I would still argue he was the best player the Titans had on offense, but he is a get open and get down kind of target. And in a Chiefs offense that is so much built around stretching the field, he's going to be a different kind of target. So the value is a little bit different than somebody who you think can go for 70 on any given play. But to get potentially a 4th-round pick, potentially a 5th-round pick out of this, while also getting a comparable pick for Ernest Jones, who only had 11 games left on his deal, which we'll talk about. Good maneuvering. It's the value you want. It's just the mixed signals that we'll talk about later that make this a little more complicated. Because at face value, if you were playing Madden and you were on a franchise file and you knew your team couldn't make a Super Bowl this year, these are deals you'd be happy to make.
Yeah. No, I don't. It's funny. Like, I don't think there's mixed signals at all. I just think time moves fast.
Yeah.
in the NFL is more what I think. Eddie says, of course, is Amari Cooper really that much better than D Hop? Look, he's 2.5 years younger. I just checked. He's 30 years old. He does a little bit, to your point, he does something different than DeAndre Hopkins. So I think it's what I think a 4th for DeAndre Hopkins and a 3rd for Amari Cooper is right. I think that sounds right.
Fair, yeah.
And my journey on this personally was when I saw that it was going to be a 5th conditional to a 4th, I thought, okay, similar to what the Titans did with his contract last year, which is he maxed out his contract because he hit all of his targets. He hit all of his escalators. I figured it'd be something similar to that, like 70% of the snaps, or if he plays all the games and the Chiefs make the playoffs. I was like, okay, this is a great deal for the Titans. It's probably going to be a 4th because he's a professional. He's going to go out there and do a great job in that offense. And then I saw it had to be a Super Bowl run, and I was like, okay, I don't love the trade as much, but I still think it's the right move. It's funny. I was on. The news broke. What was it? Wednesday morning, and I do a hit in Kansas City radio every week with a buddy of mine, and the trade had just happened, and I do college football with him normally, and he was like, "Hey, look, I know you cover the Titans too, so let's just talk about this DeAndre Hopkins thing." And I said, "Look, we can talk about this in a variety of different ways, and there's a lot of subtle, nuanced, interesting topics about DeAndre Hopkins being traded to the Chiefs on both the Chiefs and the Titans side of things." But ultimately, I have DeAndre Hopkins on 2 of my 3 fantasy teams, and I am ecstatic that he is now playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is as simple as I can explain to Kansas City fans how they should be, because Kelsey and Hopkins gives them something very different than Rice and Worthy. And with Rice and Hollywood Brown out, all these little speed guys, they're going to be a different type of offense with Hopkins and Kelsey as the primary targets. What I said to them, and you've been around Hopkins too, he is a very particular person. He is a very specific person. He's very OCD. He does things his own way. Sometimes his stretches are different than the other team. Sometimes his warm-ups are a little different. He knows himself better than almost anybody else in that locker room. He is a professional. And what I think the Chiefs are dealing with is a lot of volatility in their receiving core. Tyreek Hill, volatile player. Good, but volatile. And this has a point, so just let me get there.
I'm listening. I'm interested.
So I think that Hollywood Brown, volatile player. Xavier Worthy, young, which makes him volatile by nature. Rashee Rice, off the field stuff, volatile player. Very talented, all very good, working with Mahomes. Kelsey and Hopkins are different types of players, not just on the field, but in the locker room. And I think and this is going to be the same take I have with Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones is one of the few guys that would step up and say the thing to the media out loud about the defense. Hopkins, these guys are pro veterans, and Jones is much younger, but Hopkins is a professional who keeps the train on the tracks, going in the direction it's supposed to go. I think one of the things that they are losing in these 2 deals is any semblance of like mature veteran presence that like sort of brings folks along the journey, like brings Calvin Ridley along, brings Treylon Burks along, or whatever. And not that that's the end all be all with this, but I think the Chiefs are going to benefit in a big way because of his stability and professionalism and his particular nature. And I think the Titans are that's going to hurt them. And so I don't know if it matters because they're clearly waving the white flag here, but I don't know. I don't know. Your thoughts on that element of this? Because I think there's a mental side to these 2 players that really is a massive departure from the locker room.
If you can pull up the transcript while I'm talking and find the exact quote, because I think it's a really interesting one. There was a point yesterday where Callahan said something along the lines of, "This isn't about rebuilding a foundation. We're still trying to build a foundation." Of like, this team isn't saying, "Okay, now let's reset." This is a team
Right.
that didn't set. Like, there has not been a point this season where they're like, okay, so since we have DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones, we're good. We know exactly what we're going for. Like, this is still a team in flux, still a team in development. And this does not change that. Like, having Hopkins on your offense made it better. But I don't think that this team was ever settled in an identity of we're going to play through DeAndre Hopkins or we're going to play like DeAndre Hopkins. I think you could see last year that team had such a defined identity, such a defined foundation of Derek plays this way, DeAndre plays this way, here's the plan. I'm not saying this team doesn't have a plan. I'm saying this team hasn't found comfort in its plan yet. And that is still going to be the case whether or not DeAndre is here. So I'm intrigued to see, well, does this mean they're just going to replace DeAndre's reps with Nick Westbrook-Akina? Does this mean there's going to be a lot more speed on the field with somebody like Jaquan Jackson or bring up somebody like Bryce Oliver from the practice squad? Does this mean you're going to see Tajay Spears playing out in the slot a lot more? Like there are a lot of options you can do to completely reconfigure this offense and recontextualize how you're playing offense. But the fundamental thing that they're trying to figure out is we still got to figure out a way to win. And that was the common refrain in the locker room yesterday was, look, we're 1-5. This sort of stuff happens to a 1-5 team.
Yep. And that's why ultimately I don't think, and I don't mean to sort of pivot off of trades back to messaging, back to trades, because that's kind of what it's going to happen. But this is not this, to your point, this is what happens. And like, I know it was in your story, the Arden Key quote, who was like, I think he said something along, what was the quote in your story? Basically like this could be anything, anybody, this could be me, but I really don't understand these moves. And I'm like, number one, you're wrong both times. And I'm not trying to be rude to Arden Key here, but like, no one's going to trade for you. Number one. Number two, you should be expecting this when you are a 1-5 team with a bunch of injuries, quarterback questions, and assets that are worth something on them. Like the Ernest Jones trade to me, and like Hopkins makes so much sense. We started with that last week, right? When we talked about all these players that could get moved. Simmons has said, I think Buck Rising has reported Simmons is not being moved. That's to me that
I was standing right there. That's what he said. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. It wasn't a report thing. Cause I was going to say that sounds like it comes right from the player and that it's not like that means there's no good offer on the table or that his value isn't high enough to move him at the right time. Or there's a lot of other factors there. A player saying, I haven't been approached by the team to be traded is not necessarily that doesn't necessarily indicate anything. But like ultimately the Ernest Jones, like I cannot remember the last time a middle linebacker was moved for a 4th round pick and a player. Like I can't, and I'm talking about midseason. I'm not talking about preseason where clearly like the Titans just went and did that, where all they did was move back in the 2026 draft, like one round. What's interesting, that is not a position that normally gets attacked at that price point at this time of year. And the Seahawks are a team that has a terrible rushing defense. They've got to shore up that part of their defense. So Rand saw an opportunity and went and made something happen. Same thing with Hopkins. This is one of the more professional elements of the defense. And those two guys are now gone, Hopkins and Jones. I think it is the right thing for the Titans to do. And I cannot believe it is surprising to anybody.
No, and it shouldn't be. And I think when Arden says he doesn't understand the moves, I don't think he's saying that he doesn't understand the logic of trading when you're 1-5. I think what he's saying is, well, if you're saying we want to win, this isn't going to help us win. And from an understanding perspective, we can talk about what the messaging actually is about win now versus win later. I think I put this in the story, but Callahan used the word factions to describe the ideology between winning now and winning later. The best organizations, those factions are in lockstep of this is what we're doing to win now. This is what we're doing to win later. Yeah. The Titans are still early in that process. So it's kind of hard to marry the win now and the win later together. That was one of my criticisms of the offseason is that the entire focus was on winning now. And it was plugging stop gaps and it was picking up players who can produce now because you're confident you can win now without very much consideration of, are these players going to put you in a position to win when you're supposed to be rounding into winning on a young quarterback's contract and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just the situation they're in is they can't win now. So you backpedal a little bit. And whether or not you want to admit that you aren't capable of winning now as currently configured, that's what's happening is that they're 1-5. They're not winning now.
Yeah. George says to fix a problem, you have to recognize you have a problem. Looks like they're off to a good start. Now let's see if they can actually fix it. I think ultimately that is, and Eddie says Jones for a fourth is theft. I tend to agree with that. What is interesting, to your point, I think it's more just about time and how fast it moves in the NFL. And Brian Callahan said, when something's not working, you got to pivot. I didn't think necessarily this would be the pivot, but the front office has pivoted very quickly, and that's okay. I think that's smart management of an organization, in my opinion. And I don't like because it's a meritocracy and all these players are fighting for jobs, in particular on a team that doesn't have a good roster, right? Where you have lots of players on the bottom third of this roster that have no clue what their future is in the NFL. I get that everyone's trying to win and try to do the best job on every rep and win themselves a contract, but like the front office can't view it that way. The front office has to view it in a different way. And Callahan's right to describe it as two different groups of like mental approach, basically. Like the factions have to do future and the factions have to do today. And there could be more moves. It's pretty early. We're still 2 weeks away from the deadline, but we talked about every single player last week, and the two most prominent ones have been moved, basically.
Yeah.
So
and
this shouldn't be a surprise.
Pull up Ed's comment, because I think it's a good point that I should clarify. Even the money spent in the offseason didn't mortgage anything nor sacrifice resigning an internal talent. Correct.
Exactly.
When I'm talking about building for the future versus building for the present, your 4 big money acquisitions in the offseason were a receiver who's 30 years old, a cornerback who I believe is 26 and has a previous injury history, a 26 or 27-year-old running back with some tread on the tires, and a 5th-year center. Those are 4 positions, 3 of which historically don't age very well. So you gave 3 long-term deals to players who are in their prime, theoretically on the downslope. I know that there's things about Ridley that makes you think his prime might be extended because of fewer tread on the tires and all those things. But in general practice, you're talking about receiver, running back, and cornerback as the 3 positions on the field that are least likely to age well toward the end of a big second contract. Or third contract, I believe, in the case of Ridley. So when you have these situations, that's building for they're going to be good at the beginning of their contracts. And then you have these draft picks, your Sweats and Lathams and Skoronskis and Levis and Tajay, all of your young players who you are expecting to be good at the end of their contracts. It's rookie deals who you want to be good by year 4. And when Levis, at the time of making all these moves in March and April, was the centerpiece, foundational piece of the team, and I think you could argue still is, the goal should be make it so your roster is as good as possible when his contract is most valuable. But instead, they signed a bunch of players who are going to be most valuable right now, which means you're betting on development, you're betting on talent winning.
But to your point, that's also right now for Levis's contract, though. It is the next 3 years.
Yeah.
The next 3 years are Levis's rookie deal. The next 3 years are all those years in which those contracts for those players are probably okay. And then in the third or fourth year, they're going to age poorly. I think Pollard is going to be fine, but like maybe not because of the running back position. Ridley and Snead, I think they're okay on those deals, but I think they all are set to age out when Levis's contract ages out. So I actually think they're doing this is ultimately what I mean by moves fast. Major League Baseball, you have to sort of indicate on purpose, intentionally or otherwise, what you're doing to rebuild. Like NHL hockey, you have to be awful to truly get all the top 5 picks and rebuild. Like you have to be very specific and sort of intentional about it. In the NFL, it changes so fast. You can go from, hey, let's surround our star quarterback our quarterback to learn if he's a star, and let's surround him with pieces that if things go well, we've got a chance to contend for a wild card spot in a bad division. And if things don't go well, then A, we've learned about our quarterback, and B, we can move some of these pieces. You just have to be able to be very flexible in the NFL. And I don't think it was the wrong strategy ultimately to go get you got to spend the salary cap space at some point. Like you can't just keep rolling it over.
Sure. But at some point, I guess to my point, I would have done it this upcoming year, not last year. Okay. If you're spending $100 million, I don't know if my first instinct is to do it because you have it. And I am not a GM, and I'm not trying to be critical because I don't know the inner machinations. Like I just simply do not know the legal precedent of how you have to spend the money. But I don't know. I would have built more of a core and then spent when I was ready rather than built the core with the spending and then pigeonhole yourself of say, well, this is the core now, let's build around it. But two different strategies.
No, I hear you. I also think that there's plenty of those deals they could get out of. Like again, the Ernest Jones situation. By the way,
Sure.
for those that don't know, they get a 4th round pick and Jerome Baker, 27-year-old linebacker who has started 87 out of 99 games. Basically, that entire Ernest Jones saga, they gave up a 5th round pick in 2026 and got a 4th round pick in 2025, a linebacker who's 27, and a 6th round pick in 2026. They got 2 picks and a player for a 5th rounder in 2 drafts. So you have to look at Rand Carthon and say, and you got 5 decent games out of a player. Like, you got to look at that deal as a whole, the 2 different deals for Ernest Jones, and say, way to go. You could talk about opportunity cost, about not re-signing him as a crit. To your point, is one of the few that we talked about last week that was an actual building block piece for the future.
Sure.
And you could have signed him to a 4-year contract if you wanted to. That would have overlapped to your point, would have started next year, spending next year. But, the acquiring of draft picks, the acquiring of assets, the value of that trade, those 2 trades, I think you can kind of say all the things and it be okay all in the moment.
Yeah.
And then, and who knows, maybe the draft class next year combined with this year's draft class, all of a sudden the team is rebuilt faster than we think. So
Sure.
That's the goal. Look at Washington. I mean, their draft class is going to go down. At least it looks right now after 2 months of the season that it's not just Jaden Daniels, it's the entire draft class that's making that team better.
Right. And yeah, I mean, we're not going to talk draft prospects yet. I still have a little bit of pride. It's October 24th, but there are some players who could help this team turn things around quick. So you're right. But I still not my thing.
And the memories Ernest gave us were priceless.
All right, let's do a quick top 25 Ernest Jones moments with the Titans. Number 25, 2nd and 7 against, I don't know.
The top 5 are probably all comments after the game telling us the truth about the defense.
Don't do this to us, Jake. It didn't start. It's not over yet. We can watch football for another month before draft season.
Look, the Vols are pretty good. The Packers are pretty good. I don't have to worry about the Mets anymore. I'm in a good place right now. Okay. It also opens up some opportunities. We'll get to some of those players that could open up. Like, that's the other thing, is you also need to continue to acquire data. Whether you're going for it or not, you need to continue to acquire data, and they've now got some opportunities to acquire some data. Jaquan Jackson's a player you've already mentioned. Let's see what he can do. Cedric Gray's window is open right now to return. Let's see what he can do. What do you have to lose? More games? So we'll see some more stuff from these guys. Quickly, before we get into anything else, because I want to know about the emotion of the building yesterday, and sort of on a human element, I find that to be very interesting. And we'll talk Landry and Simmons and everybody else. I want to show everybody first why and how Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages are in fact going to help you deal with Thanksgiving. So here's the deal. My mother, love you, Mom, used to make the turkey for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday, Nick. It's number 1. I know we're big on ranking things here, but Thanksgiving is my number 1 holiday. I would trade Christmas and all the other holidays with the in-laws to have Thanksgiving with my family. However, my mother and father decided to go vegan, which is a very smart, and vegetarian, which is a very smart, healthy decision for 2 folks of their age. And I respect that and I appreciate that, but it means I don't get my turkey anymore on Thanksgiving. I don't get Mama's turkey. That's very frustrating. And now, as the oldest person in my family, I have to now provide a meal for my wife and children and some aunts and uncles and some in-laws on my wife's side. You know what I can do now? I can go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, swgbbq.com, and we'll link it for you in the show notes. But you can go to that website, and it's not, you can't order yet, but the button's there, so you can go look at the menu, right? You can go look at the menu, see what they've got, make some decisions, talk to your family, talk to who's going to be there. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue will take care of the entire process. They've got 4 different sides. They got turnip greens, magic green beans, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, pumpkin pie, jalapeno cornbread, brisket, and turkey. Check it out. Look at this. Look at that. Black Hawk Farms smoked brisket. Smoked turkey breast right there. There it is. There's some pictures. I'll put the link in the show notes. You order the meal however you want it. It is prepared for you. You pick it up on Wednesday at 2:00, the day before Thanksgiving. You save it overnight. You heat it up on Thursday morning, and you're good to go. And you know what Sinkers Beverages is going to do? Sinkers Beverages is going to have wine pairings for you, already picked out to go specifically with Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. They're working together, Nick. They're working together. 2 community companies, locally owned, working together to make your Thanksgiving completely stress-free. Yes, including your drunk uncle. Absolutely. You make him happy with good smoked brisket on Thanksgiving, good smoked turkey on Thanksgiving. He doesn't want to talk about all that politics shit. He's happy. He's happy without it.
The first time that a Thanksgiving dinner paired wine and shotguns together and it turned out positively. Like, that's nice.
That sounds like an Alabama LSU game.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like. But there you go. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Sinkers Beverages. They will they will curate your entire Thanksgiving experience so that you don't have to stress about any of it. And I, for one, cannot wait to remove that stress from my life. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So go check them out. SGW. Pitmaster Bill, we got to talk to you about your shotgun, 1 word, 2 letters. SGWBBQ.com. Go check them out. And if you walk into Sinkers, turn left, go to the wine area, huge area of wine over there. They got the barrel with all the different samples set up there. And if you talk to my guy, Grant, he'll make sure to help you out. Hey, this is going to go well with turkey. This is a little lighter. He'll do all the wine stuff for you because I don't do the wine stuff. So I don't know how to do that. That's why I know Sinkers. That's why I work with Sinkers. Okay, emotion of the building, Nick.
Right.
This is going to tie into ultimately the only question I really care about when it comes to the Lions. I want to see individual players perform well and see them grow and see them progress, and I want to be able to talk about that. And so-and-so played well. Let's see what Jaquan Jackson could do. Maybe Cedric Gray. I don't know who's going to play, but let's see some of the young guys. Let's see some of the new pieces. Let's see the offense. Mason Rudolph, I would guess, is going to be your starting quarterback. We'll get to all of that. But I'd like to know the emotion of how this team is going to handle potentially a 1-6 start against one of the best teams in the league on the road. There's no reason for this team to win this football game. Means they're probably going to play well for some reason. And the Lions coming off a big-time emotional battle against the division foe, the Vikings. The Lions are extraordinarily good and should win the football game. And if that happens, I'm curious about where this team is mentally from a fragility standpoint, considering Nick Benek's comments about the entire sideline and how there's no leadership and how the vocal leaders aren't developing on offense and how there's a confidence problem. And it's just it's not a huge deal, but it is concerning, especially if you're going to get trounced by the Lions. And now you've seen the front office break up the locker room. So what was it like on Wednesday? What are the players? How are they viewing all this? And do you think it carries over into the game in any way?
So I will start by saying it wasn't a funeral. It wasn't somber in there. The people who are usually jovial were still pretty jovial. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say everybody was listening to dirges and old sea shanties about the way things were. Like,
is that a Sturgill Simpson reference?
I don't think so. Not intentionally. Sometimes me and Sturgill just think the same things.
That's the way things used to be. Anyway,
the way things were, I think I was doing Barbara Streisand. I didn't think I was doing.
Well, so I think there's a line on his record called in the song called "Sea Stories." I think there's about the way things used. Anyway, I'm going to Sturgill Friday night. I've got Sturgill on the brain. He's at Bridgestone Arena, so
very fun.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that the thing I found most telling was talking to Jeff Simmons about this a little bit. And you guys know Jeff's personality. You know the way he talks. He is very much we're not thinking about that kind of guy. But I asked him, like, do you guys ever think about, hey, could I be next? And he's like, yeah, that's the first thing everybody thinks. Like, there were guys on the team last year, and he didn't give a specific name. You guys can read into who he might have been talking about. But he's like, there was one guy on the team last year who came in every day and said, I'm next. Like, I'm going to be the guy that's next. Like, it's natural for football players to see guys get booted and think, oh gosh, is this my fate? And I think that we've been speculating for so long about who's going to get traded because this team hasn't been very good. So they see it. Jeff admitted he sees the speculation about if he's going to get traded. Like, these are human beings who have the internet, who have the radio, who have access to modern trimmings. So
they all have cell phones in their pockets at all times, just like everybody else. So.
Even on the field, it's 3rd and 3, and they're texting.
AJ Brown's about to run a route on 3rd and 7. He's in somebody's DMs. Like, come on, AJ.
So the thing that I find so fascinating about this entire saga is it's tough to make assurances to the veterans that this isn't going to keep happening. And you can say it, but I'm sure that when they traded for Ernest, the conversation wasn't, well, this is going to be a 7-week rental. Like, I don't imagine that there was a point where this was supposed to be the plan. I think it became the plan.
Yeah.
And so if you are an older player or a veteran piece that could be of value to somebody on a 1 or 2 year deal or a deal with an out, yeah, I think that fear is going to creep in. And Amani Hooker was pretty good about this, where he said, yeah, I mean, I started getting the feeling when we started winning just one game that this could happen. Like, teams that are 1-5 don't get to stay together. That's the product of the league. And that awareness is...
By the way, that's a name... Sorry to interrupt. That's a name we did not talk about last week that I wouldn't be surprised it gets mentioned. So carry on. Sorry.
No, and so as you talk about what's the vibe going to be like after Detroit, look, this game has the real distinct possibility of it doesn't end up looking like a blowout on the score sheet because the Lions don't have to keep going after halftime.
Yeah.
Like, the Bills kept going, and good on them. Teams don't have to in a game like this. If they build a big lead, they can go into coast mode, especially the way the Lions run the football. They can drain clock. They can turn this into a 3-quarter game or something. But
I mean, Gibbs coming off a huge game. Montgomery's back healthy. They're going to... It's hard to make a case to even, like... other than watching young players get reps, it's hard to make a case as to why this game will be fun.
No, you've heard me play the game. I love playing the "Is this in your quad box" game, and I am trying to imagine. Let me just look at the schedule.
By the way, we totally screwed that up last time because we were debating Jags Bears being in the quad box. It was a 8:30 a.m. kickoff.
That was a London game, yeah. So the 1 o'clock or the local
noon Central Standard God's time.
Noon Central. Eagles Bengals. Ravens, Browns.
All right, hang on. Ravens, Brown. Okay. Okay. All right.
Titans, Lions.
If Jameis Winston is mic'd up, then maybe. Okay. Keep
Colts,
going.
Texans.
Oh God, that's brutal on the national floor.
Packers, Jags.
I mean, that's obviously in my box. Okay, keep going.
Cardinals, Dolphins.
Tua's back, maybe. Okay.
Jets, Patriots.
Oh God, these are bad.
And then game of the week, apparently, Falcons, Buccaneers.
Actually, that is very interesting.
Yeah, that's a fun game.
Especially considering all the injuries for the Bucs receiving core. Quad box for me. I mean, for me, it's Tennessee, Detroit, Green Bay, Jacksonville, Atlanta, Tampa. And then I might go Philadelphia, Cincinnati. I might go.
Philly, Cincy could be fun. I mean, you might
Cincinnati's playing better. Philadelphia's playing a little better. So
yeah. So you have the Titans in yours, which is
that's out of necessity.
Expression. Yeah,
that's out of necessity.
I don't know.
Arizona, Miami might get the nod over Tennessee, Detroit if I was picking as a fan, but I don't know.
The fact that this is not the most miserable game that figures to be in that box because of the existence of Jets Patriots. Really cool for the Titans to not be the most miserable game. And just if you are choosing to watch Jets Patriots this week, good on you. Good on you, man.
I will say, seeing Robert Saleh in Green Bay, though, I didn't hate that this week. He's going to be on the rehabilitation tour where he goes to like all his buddies' practices for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
it just helps him with some scouting. You know, like
but apparently still texting Jeff Ulbrich every day.
Yeah,
so
well, good on him.
Help the Jets.
Ed said, "Is this leadership talk a little overrated? If the team wins, doesn't that stuff take care of itself somewhat?" So maybe I need to rephrase this. I don't think that Nick Vanette's commentary about leadership is all that to me, that's not the alarming thing or the thing that I gravitated towards. I think and as I said on Monday's show with PK, I think the leadership on offense was always going to take time to develop. Hopkins is the veteran. He was there. Maybe Cushenberry, maybe Pollard. But ultimately, what you wanted was J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Will Levis, a very vocal Tajay Spears. You wanted those collection of very high-level, high-leverage picks who are starters to develop into the leadership core of the offense. And that was never going to happen in 1 year. It was going to happen over time, maybe next year, maybe the year after. So to me, I agree with Ed to some degree, and maybe I haven't made this clear. I don't think it's like, hey, they need great leaders, or maybe the free agents or the signings they brought in aren't great leaders and they miscalculated on that. It's that a team without great leadership, or a team that is young, especially with a quarterback who is emotional at times, and I would argue Jeffrey Simmons sometimes has shown us can be a little emotional on occasion, that there's a teetering of the franchise from a focus standpoint. It could be very volatile and fragile and can fall apart quickly. Mm-hmm. And that is ultimately and then when the front office says, hey, we're going to trade a bunch of veterans, that obviously kind of pushes it that direction. But that was more my concern, is like, all right, if you're going to be professionals, you got to deal with adversity. Can Brian Callahan build a culture that can handle this type of thing? And that's kind of where we're at. It's not that so-and-so, the offensive line needs to have a leader that they all look to when he's screaming in the huddle. Like, it's not about that necessarily. It's more just about holistically, the organization needs fabric, and they're trying to weave that fabric together right now. And they don't have any of it. To your point about the offensive identity, they don't have anything. They're just floating around on both sides of the ball right now.
And this is probably one of those moments where I get way too me. So sorry for whatever rant is about to happen. Isn't it a little bit patronizing when we talk about teams needing leadership? Of like, you guys are adult men who play football professionally, but you need somebody to tell you what to do. Like, I understand the logic of needing leadership, but fundamentally, is that like a outdated 60s, 70s mindset of like greatest generation playing football? And now that we got a bunch of millennials and Zoomers playing football, they're just like, no, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to figure this out on my own.
I have always believed this about being a professional athlete. Your motivation is in your paycheck. Like like college, I think it's different. College athletes need that type of stuff. They need culture, they need identity, they need focus, they need maturity, their frontal lobes aren't developed yet. But when you get paid, when your paycheck hits the bank account and your game check is $600,000, I am paying you $600,000 to go play as hard as possible on Sunday.
Yeah.
You don't need any other motivation than that. But I do think that the great, great, great teams in the NFL in particular and in pro sports, they are competing for something greater than money. And they want to win championships because they want to win and because they care. And I do think it's not about leadership. It's about sort of, I don't know what the right terminology is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's about discipline, not leadership. They need more discipline.
Yeah.
They don't need more leadership. And that's a direct quote from Jeffrey Simmons. I'm not trying to be smart here. But like, I think about it, the limits of my football experience are mediocrity in high school. And I remember being a team captain. I remember all the trappings that came with it. And not a single person listened to me. Like
all the trappings
of getting to call
all the cheerleaders. All the cheerleaders love the captains.
There were 24 seniors on my team, and I was one of 2 that didn't have a jersey in the stands. And I was the captain. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter fundamentally who the captain is. You need people who are disciplined on the field in the middle of games to actually internally motivate themselves. Because everything psychologically we know about humanity is that intrinsic motivation works better than extrinsic motivation. But we tell ourselves over and over again, football, it's all about having a veteran leader who shows you the way. And that's probably valid. Like, I'm not saying that's not important. But fundamentally, if the question is, do you want somebody who's really good at listening to what other people tell him to do? Or do you want somebody who is going to do the stuff he's supposed to do without being told? You want the second guy.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that mattered in Franklin High School in 1999 was making sure number 7 got to the girlfriend in the morning. That's all that matters. It's like as long as she's wearing the jersey that day at school, that's all that matters. I agree. I think so. Again, I think what I'm going to be, I asked PK to do this, and I'll ask you the same because I'd like to hear perspective on it, which is, I know how the locker room will be with a win. We heard it in Miami, the amount of celebrating and the relief and the sort of exhaling that took place. And they deserve that because they work hard. If they get a win in an upset like this, it would be an extraordinary accomplishment, as much as a regular season game can at the end of October. But if they lose, and it is ugly, the way Vegas predicts it to be, I want to know the state of the emotional locker room. I want to know where they're at. And it's not about, to your point, it's not about leadership. It's about, like, who is going to use this to rise to the occasion and get better from it, because that's what you are paid to do, and who wilts, who's pouting, and it's not that that's not allowed or okay in the moment, and you're disappointed after a game, you lose. Like, I'm not even saying that it's like a permanent verdict or indictment of who you are as a player. I just want to know. I want to know what it looks like and how does it feel and how do people respond to it, because ultimately that also going to be a reflection on Brian Callahan and what type of team he is running. Because as weird as it is, you still have to manage 53 personalities and emotional situations to pull in the same direction for a common goal. And that's really hard to do, especially when you are getting blown out by good football teams on the road.
Yep.
Over and over again. So, all right. Landry, Simmons, Diggs, who's next? We talked about this last week, so we don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but
if I had to pick somebody next, I'd say Landry, just on the value he represents. But if an option is there won't be another one, that would more than likely be my pick.
I think I'm with you on that too. The problem with moving Landry, and we talked about this on Thursday, the problem with moving Landry is that you already have a hole at pass rusher next year that you need to acquire. And if you move Landry, you now have two holes that you've got to fill at that position. So I don't know about that. Simmons, at least you have Tavondre Sweat sort of ready to go, and you could package a cheap free agent alongside of him or another draft pick alongside of him, lean into the rebuild a little bit. You trade Diggs, you still have Hooker. You can move in with a younger safety next year. So there's options there, but I do think Landry is the one that's most likely, but also hurts the team longer term more than everybody else. I listen, I don't, what's your opinion on Cedric Gray? He's just interesting because he was drafted with such high expectation and they communicated that to us and because of injuries has not delivered anything. Do you think that we are close to seeing him? Do you think they're going to want to turn him loose at some point during this next couple of weeks? What's the plan here with Cedric Gray?
I was not super impressed by Cedric when he was healthy in OTAs at the beginning of training camp. I think he's a developmental piece. I think that if you have somebody who you think can develop, it's good to give them reps and try. And I don't know, middle linebacker is such a strange position value-wise of like short memory, long memory here. Go back to last December and think about how positively we were all talking about Otis Reese making plays. And now he's like sixth. He's sixth in the pecking order. Think about all the hype we had about James Williams and that incredible athleticism. And he nearly made a play on special teams the other day. That was pretty cool.
Nearly made a play on special teams.
He almost blocked a punt. He got really close to blocking a punt.
I think Williams is on the path that we expected, though. This was always a 7th round project. So
yeah. So Gray, I want to see him. I want to see it work out. But I don't know. The fact that he has been a full participant in practice for roughly 3 weeks now, and they haven't done anything about it, I don't know. I really don't think it's going to be this week, and we will see about next week.
Anything else about the matchup in general you want to, see? I guess I to your point, I'd like to see more Jaquan Jackson. I assume with only 4 receivers active, they need to call somebody up, but I don't know. We'll see. But it also, if you want, we could talk quarterback here real fast before we get into the SEC. I love the fact that it took us 45 minutes to get to the most important position on the field. I'm glad to not talk Will Levis at the top of every show, because there's lots of interesting pieces and moving parts on the team. But we'll get to some of the SEC games. But quickly with Will Levis, my assumption is that Mason Rudolph, until they come out and are forcefully like, hey, this guy's ready to go, he's good to go, and he's practicing like on the first day of the practice of the week, my assumption is that Mason Rudolph will be the guy.
Yeah, call this a hunch, but I do not think this is an issue of pain tolerance right now with Will. I think this is an issue of, can he play through the pain without thinking about the pain? It's not, is it going to hurt when I throw? It's, is he going to have a split second in the back of his mind of, can I make this throw without it hurting? Yeah. And look, we can talk about a lot of quarterbacks who have played through AC sprains. Famously, Jalen Hurts led the Eagles to a Super Bowl with a sprained shoulder.
Didn't Bryce Young win a Heisman Or was that the following year?
I think that was the following year.
Okay.
But Trevor Lawrence last year played against the Titans in Week 18 and threw for like 280 yards with a sprained shoulder. Tom Brady in his career had 116 weeks where he was on the practice or the injury report with a shoulder injury and played. Like,
you looked up 116 weeks?
No, ESPN did an article about this.
Okay.
I didn't go through all of it.
It's like, damn, how'd you figure that out?
That does sound like something I would do. But
I know.
But no, ESPN had an article about it. Obviously, Drew Brees had one of the most famous shoulder injuries of all time. Aaron Rodgers has played through his first year as a starter back in 2008. He played 2 or 3 games with a sprained shoulder. This is something that quarterbacks do. The question isn't, can you play through the pain? Because I have no doubt that Will Levis doesn't mind hurting when he throws a football.
Yeah.
The question is, does that hurting affect his processing? Is his processing quick enough on the football field yet for him to throw without the pain affecting it? And I think that if the pain is as intense as it should be still 4 weeks after spraining your shoulder, that's the consideration that makes me think he's not going to play.
Eric went on a journey. Eric went on a journey here with these 2 comments.
Yeah.
Will Levis is a young Josh Allen. When he gets a little experience, he'll be a top 10 quarterback. And then responds immediately afterward with what processing, referring to your question about can he process. Eric, I respect your journey there, buddy. That's your journey.
The one thing that people will tell you on the record and off the record about Will Levis is that he sees the field correctly. Is he making the right decisions? Not all the time. But he never comes off the field and says, I didn't know what I was seeing. Well, roughly 9 times out of 10, roughly 10 times out of 10, he comes off and says, this is what happened and I messed up. That's processing, just processing late.
But even when he processes correctly, there are still questions about the other half of that equation, which is accuracy. Sure. Processing and accuracy are the 2 things. We've talked about it a lot. So, all right. So I agree. To me, they're not hiding him, which, as I said on Monday, all good conspiracy theories have like a kernel of truth, and they're believable. And that's what allows folks to believe that Quinn Ewers might be retiring from Texas football after a media company's Instagram account gets hacked. If you know, you know. To me, that's the problem with this Levis situation, is that it is believable that Brian Callahan is benching him, not for injury. That is a believable, it's not true, but it is a believable thing that fans are going, oh, got to go to Mason Rudolph because the other guy can't do it, and not because he's hurt. And that's sort of the problem with the situation for Levis is this, this weird internet conspiracy theory world that we live in right now. And because it's believable. It's not true. He is injured.
He's hurt, guys.
Yeah, he's hurt.
I can tell you that on pretty darn good authority.
Yeah,
he's hurt.
He's hurt. But ultimately, I think you're asking the right question: is does the pain impact the productivity? That's the question. Not long-term injury problems or concerns or managing the pain. Or Will Levis is tough as hell, so he doesn't. That's not going to bother him. All right, we'll see what happens.
Last answer: No, I would not prefer to watch Mason for the rest of the year. You got to know what Will is. We've talked about that a lot of times before. I'm not going to rehash the entire conversation, but you got to let Will play.
For like all of the 3 major reasons. Like 1, entertainment value as a fan, 2, learning what the future of the franchise is, and 3, and almost now most importantly, the best possible draft pick. All of those are Will Levis, probably Will Levis, especially when you're trading away a bunch of pieces. So we shall see. All right, Sinkers Beverages, of course, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 locally owned businesses, award-winning locally owned businesses that work together to make your Thanksgiving fantastically easy. It's all about processing and accuracy. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages. They'll pick out the wine for you. Join the in crowd, by the way. If you go to Sinkers Beverages, join the in crowd. That gives you access. All they do is sort of monitor all your purchases, and so they know sort of where you're at. And once you're in that rewards program, they will give you all kinds of access to fun stuff like bourbon drops and allocations and fancy this and fancy that. You get all kinds of stuff. And of course, they give you their world-class service. Craft beer retailer of the year in Nashville. So go check out Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, almost 40 years of service, and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, their sister store, 50 years of service in that community. So almost 90 years of serving Nashville, those 2 businesses. So check them out, Sinkers Beverages, Bluegrass Beverages, and of course, go get some brisket from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. until the meat is gone, or 3 p.m. But most of the time, the meat is gone. So there you go. I don't like barbecue joints that like keep it all until the night shift. You know what I mean? Like, no, just cook the meat and sell it till it's gone. That's my kind of joint. Quickly, Texas A&M, LSU, much deeper, more hateful rivalry than anyone in the conference realizes. I love it. It's one of my favorites. And it's a playoff elimination game between two teams that have not lost an SEC football game, which is fascinating. Strength on strength. Garrett Nussmeier and LSU's offense really developing nicely. Mike Elko's defense really solid. And what we thought were weaknesses, LSU's defense, Texas A&M's offense, both making progress and getting better. Who you buying right now as a potential playoff team, and who's eliminated in this one?
I will tell you this. I was talking to a certain Survivor contestant about this yesterday. And he was asking.
He doesn't know anything about SEC football.
That's the thing. He was like, I don't have to watch that game, right? I'm like, you have to watch LSU A&M at Kyle Field. Anytime LSU A&M is at Kyle Field, you have to watch that game. I am buying both of these teams. I think that they are both better than I thought they would be. I think these are two true top 10 teams right now. I don't think of this as a true elimination game for Texas A&M. LSU probably.
They got Bama next week.
Yeah. Which one does LSU?
LSU's got Bama next week. Yeah, but then then it's kind of clear sailing after that. A&M has kind of clear sailing after this before they host Texas.
Yeah. I think that a 2-loss A&M team with a win over Texas gets in. I agree. Know if a 2-loss LSU team with wins over Ole Miss and Bama get in. We'll see.
I see what you're saying. I've guaranteed Texas A&M's victory over Texas, by the way, all summer. I've guaranteed.
Very cool.
Don't pat me on the head.
You have an opinion. Wow. I don't know.
It's an opinion that is risky. I'm out on the ledge here, Nick. Come on.
I like A&M marginally here. I like A&M's run game. I like A&M's defense. I like them making this we've talked about my high opinion of Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not talking down LSU, but I do think that the way A&M's played the last 3 weeks, I just like the way this team's playing right now.
What, by barely beating Arkansas and Mississippi State? Here's the thing. I'm with you on A&M. I really like A&M. I've always thought they would be better than we thought, and I thought they would grow into something very dangerous by the end of the year, which is what's happening. Because eventually, if you ruin enough seasons, you become the one having the season, which is sort of what they're doing. I think for some reason, I've got money on LSU plus the 3. I think they win it outright. For some reason, I think they are a more fully formed, mature program by a little bit because Brian Kelly's been there 3 years. I think Nussmeier's that good, and I think the coaching staff for LSU is that good, and they're getting better. And I was higher on A&M preseason than the expectations. I was lower on LSU, and to your point, I've now come around on LSU. I think it's gonna be interesting. Missouri. Great story about Brady Cook last week, leaving in the first quarter, going to the hospital, telling everybody, I'm full Willis Reed. I got to go back out there and play in one of my last 3 home games and blah, 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 blah. They go out there and win the game. Great story. But you still play terrible football against a god-awful Auburn football team, and that's a concern. Alabama, meanwhile, I would assume angry after, a very hostile game against Tennessee. I like Alabama minus the 13 here, especially if Brady Cook's not 100%. Where are you at on this one? Also, potentially a playoff elimination game for both teams.
Yeah, you guys, we don't have to talk about my Missouri slander again. This is somebody has an opinion thing.
I don't think it's slander.
I have been fading Missouri since the second they won that bowl game against Ohio State. I don't know. I think that it's a cute story. We all understand that the schedule is a little softer for Missouri this year. We saw the circumstances. The team just doesn't have the talent it did last year. When you're Missouri, you don't overcome losing 2 pro defensive linemen and 2 pro cornerbacks and
a pro middle linebacker.
Yeah,
pro middle linebacker, pro left tackle, pro running back. On and on and on and on.
You lost a lot of talent. Alabama is the more talented football team. I expect them to bounce back. I don't know if they cover the 13, but I would expect it.
There are 135 teams in college football. Alabama's strength of schedule, number 3 in the country. Yep. Missouri's strength of schedule, 100. 100. 3 digits in their strength.
But they went to Massachusetts, man.
Very weird. That might have reduced their strength of schedule. Unsure. Barely beat Boston College. Barely beat Vanderbilt, although both teams improved. It's mostly about Cook not being fully healthy. If he's fully healthy, maybe they give him a run with Luther Burden, but if not, I'm with you. Roll Tide. Texas at Vanderbilt. You got that one. And by the way, our good friend Stephen Godfrey on SEC Football Live called Missouri Paper Tigers. So there you go. It sounds like we're all in agreement on Missouri. Texas, any reason for Vanderbilt to just be like over their skis on this one and like actually compete? Like Texas, I assume would be pissed off for greatness after last week. I am curious to get your thoughts on how Sarkisian is managing. Is Sarkisian managing the quarterback situation correctly or not?
Sorry, there is currently a cat on my laptop stand.
Can we get the cat on the camera again?
Yeah. Come here.
There we go.
There's a cat.
What does the cat think about Arch Manning coming in at the end of the second quarter?
Expects it. I'll make this about the Titans since a lot of people are Titans fans here. Do y'all remember the feeling in that AFC Championship game in 20 where you'd already beaten the Patriots and you'd already beaten the Ravens and you're like, yeah, I want to go to the Super Bowl, but at this point the story's been fun enough. Like
it's very much how I felt as a Mets fan watching them lose to the Dodgers.
It's like, we've had our fun. This wasn't supposed to happen. Now, if the bad thing happens, we understand. We're not happy the bad thing happens, but like we're playing with house money here.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. Vanderbilt's in that position. Like they've had their fun. If Texas comes in and wins by 50, that does not change the fact that Vanderbilt has had its fun. Yep. If you're going to feel angry about a 7 or 8 win Vanderbilt season, screw you.
I do want to see
the coolest thing.
I agree. I think they have South Carolina and Auburn still left on the schedule, and I really want to see them. I want to see Diego Pavia go into Auburn and beat Auburn with 2 different teams 2 years in a row. I think that's awesome. Like only in college football can you beat Auburn on the road as a New Mexico State quarterback and then go on the road and beat Auburn as a Vanderbilt quarterback. He's a hero. He's a modern American icon. Diego Pavia. Vandy is turned.
Yeah, I am forever going to remember these Vandy games that have made me happy.
Yes.
But again, if they don't,
not many other ones to remember.
If they don't beat Texas this weekend, which let's be realistic, they're not going to beat Texas this weekend.
Yeah, no.
You guys don't have to be sad about it. Just be happy that you got to watch a ranked Vandy versus Texas game. It's incredible. That is incredible.
Anything else interest you in the SEC? Ole Miss hosting Oklahoma. Oklahoma is having a real journey in the SEC. 4 games, 3 losses, 2 quarterback changes, and 1 firing. Way to go, Oklahoma. Welcome to the conference.
If you recall back in August, my opinion was Oklahoma's going to get hot their last 3 SEC games, and they'll figure it out, and we're going to hype them up next year. Okay. I'm backpedaling a little bit, but this is the end of the terrible stretch. Like having to start with Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee as 3 of your first 5 SEC games. That's hard. That's always going to be hard. I think the way Ole Miss's defense is playing, because that game's in Norman, or is that game?
It's in Oxford. Yeah,
it's in Oxford. Yeah, that Ole Miss defense in Oxford against. Who would have thought we're talking about Ole Miss's defense putting Oklahoma's offense in a blender? What the hell has happened to the sport I love? But
2024, baby. 2024.
But yeah, I just there's no way that Oklahoma offense has any juice.
All right, what do you got coming up after the Titans game on Sunday? You got I'm sure you're filing stuff from Detroit. So where can people find you, and what do you got coming up for everybody?
Yeah, keep a lookout for tomorrow. I'll have something more a little bit in depth about some of the shoulder stuff we've been talking about with Will, the mechanics. I talked to an actual doctor. I talked to somebody much smarter than me about how shoulders work. So keep an eye out for that.
Does he know anything about Saturday Night Live though? I mean,
I did not ask his opinion on season 13 versus season 14 of what was the golden age of the Hartman era. Okay. But I do.
Don't sell yourself short, is all I'm saying.
Thank you. But yeah, we'll have coverage from there. I'll be in Detroit writing about, I don't know, I think I predicted a 31-13 Lions win. Sounds right. Somewhere thereabouts. This team's averaging 40 points a game this month. That's good. Ridiculous. In the NFL, 40 points a game. But yeah, at Nick Suss on Twitter, Tennessean.com. Subscribe. We have stuff behind a paywall every once in a while, and you can read that, and you can be smarter than your friends, because the stuff that I put behind the paywall is the really smart, geeky stuff. If you want an 850-word story about every single play that has cost the Titans 3 or more points this season. I've got you covered. It's behind a paywall, and you can read
it. Look, that is the cost of like half of a brisket sandwich at Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. I would say that's worth it then.
Please. Yeah, please. That's all I have to add.
Yeah.
Please keep my little Operation Gannett afloat.
Keep that small indie outlet moving and working. No, there are great reporters and great writers over there at the Tennessean doing great work. So we do appreciate you coming on always, each and every week, Nick. So you can get to him there at Nick Suss. Read his work, Tennessean.com. Pay for good journalism. Subscribe. Of course, you got all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network covering the Tennessee Titans and college football. We've got SEC Football Live with me and Godfrey every Wednesday. You can check that out everywhere you get your podcasts and on the YouTube page as well. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Give us 5 stars. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. And, of course, you've got Hot Read Podcast with Stoney and JT every Tuesday and Friday. You got the Paul Karski Podcast on Monday with me on the football show, and then Sunday after the games, and then Thursdays, of course, on his own feed as well. So make sure you check out all the other great shows. Music City Audible. Justin Mello just wrote a book about the Titans. Make sure you check that out. Titans of the South. Make sure you go. Perfect Christmas gift for everybody. So go support Justin, another great writer and member of the 440 Sports team. So appreciate all you guys. Appreciate all you listeners, subscribers. Share the product on Twitter and Facebook. Other than that, Nick, safe travels, my guy. Have a good weekend. And, of course, we will talk to you guys on Monday. Thanks for listening, everybody.